Sublime magnificence.
Hey guys, you know who it is, what's going on, when it's happening, where it's at, and why we're here today. How you doing? It is I, the sublimely magnificent, big ugly himself, Omari Ellis Feo Grande on YouTube, back with another episode of this podcast where we talk about things we enjoy, movies, and other forms of media that we trade back and forth. This guy hasn't seen, and as usual, I'm not just gonna trade this with myself. That wouldn't be a trade, that'd just be talking to myself. I'm with one of my best friends in the world, El Director himself, Bill Smith.
Hello, Omari. Thank you for having me again, as always. Hello, Markets.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And like I said, this guy hasn't seen. And this week, I'm the one trading something with him, and I've chosen a film, an anime film. I think our second anime-related thing on this series. And rather than do the series itself, because the series is like 100 episodes, worth watching, but 100 episodes, I'm like, this movie is a good enough introduction to kind of get at least a bit of the story. Hokuto no Ken, a.k.a. Fist of the North Star. The film was in '86. Originally, it was directed by Toyo Ishida, written by Buron-san, who I believe also wrote the comic Tetsuo, or Hara Suzumu Takuku. And the Japanese cast, at least, because I couldn't really find the English dub cast, was Akira Kamiya as Yamamoto and Utsumi. Yes. I don't know. Yeah, we watched for convenience sake, we watched the English dub that came out in '91.
And that's my doing. I'm gonna go ahead and please, everyone, stop throwing things at Omari. Stop. That's my doing. I'm gonna confess something to you guys right now. I don't like reading.
I don't blame you.
It sounds awful, but I enjoy a good read when I'm reading.
Yes.
I don't love subtitles. I don't speak Japanese, and I don't understand Japanese. So if it's available to me, I prefer a dub, and I immediately sacrifice quality of that dub.
Yeah.
I'm dropping all my expectations on the quality of said actors and dubbing, because you never know.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that I can still get everything from the words and the images and all of that stuff,
Yes, and if I were to help with or also like participate on that particular stance of sub versus dub or whatever. Yeah. Growing up, I was literally exactly the same. I didn't start watching anything like subbed until there were certain series or movies that people wanted me to watch, where all I had was the Japanese version with subtitles and fan subs back in like the early 2000s, Naruto stuff, and Dragon Ball movies that hadn't been dubbed, or you couldn't find the dub easily. So after doing that, eventually I got used to it. But as far as sub versus dub, it's literally whatever you prefer. Just watch it and enjoy it.
Right.
And
I can completely understand people saying, no, the true... Like the true content is in the subtitled or the direct, hearing it, because that's
usually how the writers are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I completely understand that. And I also acknowledge the complete and utter shit shows that can be in English dub sometimes. But I also want to acknowledge that sometimes it can be done very well. Like most of the Miyazaki films, their dubbings are very amazing voice casts.
Yeah. I actually put all respect to Granny Goku and Granny Krillin and all of them. I actually preferred the English dub of Dragon Ball.
Yeah, the Dragon Ball is filled with character and interesting voices, and it's not like it's just like, hello, how are you? Thank you very much.
Goku, as a 40-year-old man, still sounds like a 10-year-old kid in the Japanese version. Maybe not 10-year-old, but it's been the same lady voicing him since he was a kid, which is why, like, all respect to Masako, whatever her last name is. She's great. She's goated, as they say. Same thing to the lady that's been voicing Krillin forever and now voicing Luffy and just rolling in money. Because two of the biggest anime franchises of all time, she's related to them from like damn near the series starting. All respect to them. However, I still like, but for me, I think also when it comes to sub versus dub is whatever you grew used to first and how you were introduced to it. Like, I heard the Dragon Ball dub first, so hearing the Japanese voices was kind of weird. Vice versa with One Piece, I heard the Japanese voices first, and then hearing it in English, at least, obviously the 4Kids one was terrible. We can talk about that or some other time. The Funimation dub, same people that dubbed Dragon Ball Z, the voices are great. Luffy's voice... and he's the main character, but it is what it is. So sub dub, watch it. Whatever makes you want to watch it, just enjoy it. Absolutely. Just enjoy the series however you prefer, and let other people enjoy it too.
And just to recap, we were watching Fist of the North Star, the 1986 animation film, and we watched the English dubbed version.
Yes, we did.
Which I've also been told from a friend at work today, actually, that we might have actually even, and you should be able to speak to this, that we actually watch a pretty heavily censored version of the film as well.
Oh,
that the Japanese version would have been much gorier.
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen the Japanese version of this movie. It was pretty fucking gory.
It's a pretty gory movie.
I'm like, how much gorier can it be?
That's what I told him. I was like, bro, it was pretty gory. There's a lot of people exploding. Viscera.
Now, the movie, probably there wasn't much censoring. I can't speak for like the TV show. If that got a dub and how much they might have censored that.
Okay.
But...
And he might have been talking out of his ass. Some people just talk out of their ass. But,
it was gory enough. There was the occasional time where the fountain of blood spurting for someone's head was white instead of red, but they do that in the Japanese version too for sensory purposes. They're like, okay, you get the idea. However, we have to do this with the limitations because technically this is a kids movie. Yes, it's from Shonen Jump, which literally is like for teenagers or little boys, like Shonen whatever. Same thing Dragon Ball's from and One Piece and all of them. Started in the 80s. But yeah, no, Hokuto no Ken, Fist of the North Star, I will probably be using both terms numerously throughout this, just because I got used to the other version.
Because he's tight like that.
Because I got used to the other version. Anyway, so... Bill, I know.
Like
thank you. Well, if you say so. Anyway, tangents.
So I had not seen this because, I mean, as we've discussed in past episodes, anime is just not my main wheelhouse. I've seen some of the greatest hits. This show is helping me fill in those. Feel like I'm good. By the end of this run, I'm gonna know all the greatest hits,
or at least have some kind of introduction.
Right, between what I've previously watched and what I'm watching through this. So that's awesome. But so anime's not really directly my wheelhouse, but weirdly, I did know quite a good amount about this. I mean, not a good amount, but I had a lot to pull from going into what I was expecting. At some point there was an Xbox 360 accessible game that two friends of mine were playing a ton of. It was very Dynasty Warriors-esque.
Fist of the North in America, it was Fist of the North Star Kin's Rage.
Sure.
I'm just telling you the name of the game.
Yeah. And I played it a little bit, not nearly as much as them. They like if I was hanging out over there, it would be about 80% them and about 20% me, just because I wasn't. The Dynasty Warriors type has never been my thing.
And it's literally made by the Dynasty Warriors people.
But I got to see, but by virtue of that game, where you have access to the entire run of characters and you can play them and you can replay levels to build them up and be able to do different moves. I watched a lot of cycling of different Fist of the North Star characters.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of cutscenes. Like once going into this movie, once we meet the very Griffith looking man, the white hair.
Good guy or bad guy?
Good guy.
Ray.
Once we meet him, I completely remember the levels in the video game where you are storming the fortress to save his sister.
Yeah.
So, and I also remembered that he was probably my favorite character to play when I got handed the controller.
Ray's pretty godlike.
So there were several things that I kind of that sparked into me, and I remembered, and I knew the Bruce Lee, kind of stuff, because that's all in that video game. I also, you had in our Mad Max episode, deeper into our catalog, you had mentioned maybe 3 or 4 different times of like, yep, and here's another thing that makes me say, this is North Star must have really loved the Road Warrior.
Exactly.
And so I heard that several times, so I knew that coming in. I never really pulled that from the video game, oddly enough, the post-apocalyptic scenario. And also the customization of costumes and things like that in those type of video games. Who knows if they were ever in true character garb. So, so I never pulled the Road Warrior thing from the video games, but I knew that from your comments earlier. And so I had a lot leading into it.
Yeah.
And then it starts. And first I had a little bit of concern because it was very hard to access.
Yeah.
If we weren't looking for the English dub, would it have been much easier?
I don't know. I think maybe.
Because you were always searching for the
I was looking for the English dub first and seeing if I could find it. If I couldn't find it at all, I would have maybe Japanese subtitle is the only way we can go.
And I would have. And for future, I'm willing to go down that road. I just always prefer the dub if it's available.
And I'm, here to be
a property that you're like, we should really watch this in the Japanese kind of thing.
Fully Cooley, I was like, nah, I preferred that in English. Let's watch this in English anyway.
But yeah, its availability was a little concerning to me because in 2022, with everything that's on the internet, if this isn't out there, and then it starts going. And some of my first early notes is the background, the backgrounds in the early narration that I don't really understand. Spoiler alert, I'm not understanding most of this movie. The backgrounds of the pre-nuclear war and the narration are very pretty and they're very detailed, and I like the art, and I'm liking the art style of the backgrounds, and that's all very interesting. And then we finally get to the end of narration, and we're fading in on Ken and Julia. Julia. Yeah. And the two of them are walking, and the first couple of shots, if you will, of the first few frames of Ken and Julia talking back at each other. There was just something off about it where I was like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible.
You're not the only one. I'm like, did I just nostalgia this?
Hanna-Barbera can get really bad and like really cheap, shitty animation.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, maybe the backgrounds are pretty because those are recycled, reused paintings that they already had. But the animation is rough, and like, yeah, I was worried that was gonna happen for a second, and then I'm immediately into it.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, as far as like how I got into Hokuto no Ken or Fist of the North Star, became a fan around 2010 due to the games. This movie is more of an alternate telling of the, I'd say, first 3/4 of the series. It kind of takes some bits in here and makes a movie out of it. So some things don't happen exactly like the thing. Some characters aren't included. Some characters are included way earlier than they were, whatever. But it's more or less you get the gist of what this series is about overall. But yeah, became a fan around there. I was expecting the exploding heads and fists because I've seen, Fist of the North Star, though I was wary about it being a English dub, primarily because it's an English dub from 91. As opposed to a modern day English dub, where people have gotten more used to trying to time their words with the lip flaps, which is why sometimes people will say lines that need to be said slower. They'll say it fast because they're trying so desperately to match the lip flaps.
Right. I'm able to just turn that part of my brain off.
Well,
I don't know. I just don't see it anymore.
And when you're used to hearing certain voices for people, like you go from Kenshiro, who's like "Omae wa mo shindeiru" to "Yeah, in fact, you're already dead." And I'm like, wait, what? It's jarring, but I got used to it as the movie went on. Save for a few lines that get delivered here or there in the opening.
Yeah, the Julia voice act.
Yeah, specifically her.
A little rough. She's a little rough, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so I guess we'll get into the movie. Some initial reactions. You talked about the initial drawings and stuff. Any other initial...
It's kind of exactly what
as advertised.
I'm anticipating,
Yeah.
Like I kind of, I think a great reoccurring theme in anime that brings me back is, and maybe this is intentional on their part, I don't know, like this is like a secret rule of anime, is that it feels like there's always got to be somebody who is like pushed to their absolute brink and then 5% more and then they just say no and go godlike.
the limit breaking, if you will. Yeah.
Like they decide that it's not going to happen and then it doesn't happen. Those are like all my favorite animes I can think of have those moments, and this one nearly, I mean, we kind of skip it a little bit, like initial reactions. It's in basically the opening scene, like the way his younger brother, the middle brother kills our main character Ken.
Yeah.
He like fucking. I want to know how he survives that. Like, I want to see the breaking the no moment.
Yeah.
Living through that and making it to that village where he grows the beard. But we miss out on that. But I feel like we get it in the moment where the little girl, if I can jump into a standout moment where the little girl is about ready to get stomped on. Mm-hmm. And that's his return. And that's kind of our where we should have had that moment with Ken for himself in the bottom of that crevasse.
Yeah.
We get it a little bit later, but it's from that little girl. And he shows up. He is the godlike presence that shows up.
Walking through the buildings as they fall on him, just...
Dude, what was that? Like, the one that was falling and he was pushing through it with his face. And then when he got done, he was just covered in rubble. And had to, like, do a flex snap to, like, let it all fall off.
And one thing I do love, speaking of him, when he chooses to, like, all right, this motherfucker gotta die type shit. Yeah. The Kenshiro trademark clothes exploding. Where he, like, flexes real hard and his shirt and arms are just all exploding. Hits him with the fucking, you know, I don't think he ever said the name of the attack in the movie, but it's like his, you know, his version of the Kamehameha or whatever, his signature thing, the Hokuto Hyakuretsuken or the 100 crack fist of the North Star.
Who's the sumo in Street Fighter?
Honda, who has he has the 100 hand slap, and Chun-Li's kick, the Hyakuretsuken, which is literally, instead of Hyakuretsuken, it's Hyakuretsuken kick. It's fist. It's 100 kicks. But yeah, so they're Street Fighter has a ton of 80s anime references, by the way, between Fist of the North Star and Dragon Ball and JoJo's. And obviously, we mentioned 80s shit like Bloodsport influences on Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. They literally were just like, let's take everything we like and put this in a fighting game. And it's like, if you know, you know. I'm
surprised some of the big anime brands don't. I mean, maybe they do, and I'm just not aware of it. Have like licensed fighter games.
They do. Dragon Ball Fighters is one. Came out recently, and they have a lot of fighter games,
like Capcom versus Marvel kind of thing, where it's like where
gotcha.
One umbrella anime corporation or manga corporation like grabs all of their licenses.
Shonen Jump loves to do that. They just don't do it in your traditional fighters. They do it in more like what people describe as arena fighters. It's more of like a 3D environment kind of thing, but it's not what you'll see as much at a fighting game tournament. But Shonen Jump likes to do that, Jump Force being the most recent one of those. So they do happen. Also, Tatsunoko versus Capcom. Tatsunoko being a Japanese anime company that did shit like Gatchaman and all other kinds of like 80s Tenguman superhero shit, or Chorus. They did one versus Capcom for the Wii.
Okay.
So it happens, just not as often. But it does happen. So, sorry, I'm just help.
No, I asked them. I went down that road. But yeah, I just wanted to jump us back on track. That, like,
fair enough.
That was one of my standout moments. And also, I'll mention for the English dub, I really like her friend. I really like the guy who, the person who voices the little guy.
Bat or Bot or Bart, or whatever the hell his name is. I think they say Bat in this movie.
I like his character. I like the voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
That scene where we meet them and then Ken saves them is that's a really great scene.
Yeah, I do like that as well, and that's a similar scenario to how we first meet Kenshiro in the manga / anime. Well, I'll say anime. It's not like I read the manga for this series, but in the anime, it starts with Kenshiro in the desert, getting like captured because he's like dying of like water, and he gets put in like a jail cell with Bat, who got caught stealing, and Bat introduces him to Lin or Rin, and he's like, she doesn't talk. Same sad backstory she had here, but she don't talk. And Kenshiro just kind of looks at her and just poke. She'll talk when she's ready. And then those guys attack the town, and they grab her and like pick her up, and he's still threatening the city, like, I'm gonna kill this girl if y'all don't do nothing. And then her first word she yells, and then he just goes to the jail cell, breaks the bars off, and Bat's like, what the fuck? He comes out there, put her down. Who the fuck is you? You're already dead. What? It's like, holy shit. This dude. What I love about Kenshiro, and the movie doesn't have as much, is I called it, because that made an impression on me. Kenshiro is one of those main characters that, unlike most Shonen Jump main characters, he's not really about the bullshit. He if a motherfucker needs to die, they need to die. And he will kill them.
Most of our fight scenes end in a single interaction.
Yeah.
One punch, one kick, one... One, like, most of our fight scenes, except for his boss fights, that some of them last two like his. You think that this entire movie is building up to go confront his former best friend, and then he arrives and his older brother has already snatched his girl from his former best friend, and then Ken defeats him in fucking 2 seconds. It's like 2 moves. Block, block, block. Bam. You're dead. You're dead.
That fight's
a point. You're gonna explode in a minute.
Now, I will say that is one of the things that differs from the series. Because in the series, the first like 20 episodes, it's Kenshiro looking for this motherfucker to get his girl back and get back at him for the 7 scars and stuff. Yeah. And he fights the fat dude, Mr. Hart, then, because everyone in that gang was named after like cards and shit. So he was Hart. He fights him and everybody else. But the first 20 episodes, I'm like, this is a cool series and all, but I never thought I'd say this. But I might be getting tired of watching people just getting poked once and having their head explode. It's too easy for them. And then he fights Shin. It's a bit of a fight. And it's like, okay, so people that had this other martial art at the time, because Kenshiro practices Hokuto Shinken, which is like the Fist of the North Star, rough translation and stuff. Right. And Shin and some other people like Rei practice Nanto Seiken, which is essentially the South Star Fist. Whatever. They're both assassination martial arts, but as opposed to Hokuto Shinken, which really only supposed to have one successor, who ends up being Kenshiro, and some other people who were training, and Kenshiro was the one chosen. Nanto Seiken has like different sub-schools that each have their own master. Shin is one, Rei is another, and then some other people we haven't seen, that we don't see in this movie. There's Salzer, who's hilarious. He's all offense, no defense. Like, Kenshiro's like, why don't you take a stance? A stance implies defense. I'm all offense. And he just stands there with he like fights with his chest out. Like, he's just going at you. It's fucking hilarious. And then there's a lot other people.
Like, that's one of my few complaints, is there's a little bit of, but it's understandable because it's built into the plot. Mm-hmm. Is that there's a little bit of, like you said, if you don't have superpowers, he's like flicking you on the nose.
Like one scene, he's literally just swatting as he walks forward, and just people just dying as they splat against the wall.
Yeah. But if you have superpowers, then likely you get one ta, and then you're cocky, and then he goes, "You're already dead," and then they explode. I think that happens maybe 3 times.
That's his catchphrase.
Like, see, I'm fine. You're already dead. Explosion.
Yeah, that's his catchphrase from the series, and also a meme on the internet. The fucking Omae wamo shindeiru. Nani? That high-pitched noise they like to use. Like, that's his catchphrase. Another one that he uses a lot, not really a catchphrase, but he says it a lot in the series, is that Hokuto Shinken is invincible. And you can see why he would say that, because the only motherfuckers that can kind of stand up to it are other Hokuto Shinken users. And hell, even Jagi was like, oh god, he hit me, counter the pressure points. And how it works is, they have a very thorough, at least the Hokuto art, a very thorough understanding of how pressure points affect the human body. and they can use it to either heal or kill if they poke the right thing, essentially.
Yeah.
There's one character.
Ken's godlike form can poke his Jaga and make him pull out his gun, turn it on himself, and almost pull the trigger.
Chucky had to like press alternate points.
10 seconds ago.
And I believe you were the one telling me you saw like online that the writer had studied acupuncture and pressure points in real life. Before this, as well as spoilers, been heavily influenced by Bruce Lee and Mad Max.
Right. Yeah. Very, very clearly, as you suggested in our Mad Max episode. But yeah, it was one of his early life paths that he bailed on. Apparently, was going like the medical acupuncture pressure points kind of route, and when he was struggling to get an idea off the ground manga wise, one of his writer friends was like, dude, write what you know. You're obsessing over these Bruce Lee movies right now. You're super into Chinese martial arts right now, and you're really into pressure. You know a lot about pressure points. Write a manga around Chinese martial arts with a specialist in pressure points.
And that's what he did, and it worked.
And I hope he gave that guy some money. Because I also read on that same page that this is like, it's one of the top 10 highest grossing Japanese IPs of all time.
And I was just
of all of the stuff that they've been involved in.
And I'll just say that to any aspiring creators out there. If you're like writer's block, like what will the people like? And some people, I know you need to hear this, myself included, even though I may not listen. Sometimes you don't need to focus on what everybody else will like. You just need to focus on creating what you like and enjoy. And if you truly care about it and treat it right, the success will come. Or it won't, whatever. But you need to focus on what you like and not what everybody else does. Why don't you get into...
If the success will come, adjust your definition of success.
Also true. Adjust your definition of success. Do what makes you happy, and then you will always at least be somewhat successful because you'll always be happy. Anyway, so other standout moments for you, because I know this movie has a lot. There's
a lot of interesting stuff. Like I wish the Shin fight would have been longer, but I also really enjoyed that the big climax that you thought was going to happen, which is really just leading you into the third act. It's not even the big climax that you thought it was, is actually just like a conversation between two buddies who are like tired of this bullshit. Specifically Shin. Yeah. And since he's dying, he's like, all right. But yeah, that was interesting, but also I was bummed because I was primed for like, ooh, this is going to be a big one. Probably my favorite moment of this movie, the most interesting moment of this movie, it's so interesting that it goes this way, is the big climax of our thing. The fight between Ken and the older brother is bigger, and it's the fight I wanted for Shin, so that's nice, and it's okay. It's nothing crazy, but it's pretty cool. And but what I really found interesting is that our main character and hero gets told by a wise voice, don't do this shit. Stop now. Turn back. You're better than this. You're meant for bigger things in your future. This is going to kill you. And he ignores it. And then our big villain of the film gets stopped by a little girl, and the little girl goes, stop. And he goes, why'd you stop me? And she's like, because I want you to...
I don't want Kid to die.
Because I don't want you to kill him. I want you to spare him. And he's like, okay. and just walks away.
And he thinks back to some words he got earlier in the film from a guy he then subsequently killed after he told him that, where he's like, true strength is not about power. It's about perception. It's adoptive.
Is that the English is that the
it's adoptive
thing, or okay.
It's dad, sensei. It's their sensei / adoptive father.
All three of them trained to be Fist of the North Stars.
All three of the ones in the movies, and the fourth one who didn't make it into the movie, Toki. And yeah, like, Kenshiro obviously is the one chosen. Rao clearly has all the power to do so, but his ambition is to be that, and that ain't exactly what you need the martial art for. So that's why Kenshiro gets chosen. But neither one of them motherfuckers would have gotten chosen, because Toki was just literally the prodigy of all prodigies and looked like Jesus on top of it. However, he held the blast door shut during the nuclear explosion in their area, and he got pretty much super cancer, and so he couldn't be, because he's just constantly nursed because he's like coughing up a lung all the time.
Well, yeah. So that was one of my favorite. It was so interesting. I was dumbfounded.
I was caught off. I was like, "What the hell?"
Movie is just the little girl going, "No, stop!" And the villain's like, he looks at his brother, and yes, he has that reflection moment about his adopted father and all of that, but from the little girl's perspective, she said, "No, stop." Why? Because I want you to spare his life. And he turns around, looks at Ken,
who's out,
and then he turns back to the little girl, and he goes, he'll be fine once you take care of her. Or once you take care of him. Good luck. You got a big future ahead of you. And then just walks away.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? He's got people to protect. He's got to protect you. So you know what? Cool. Yeah, and he just walks away.
Is our hero choosing violence and our villain choosing peace? Is the ending of this movie?
So I like that.
I find that incredibly interesting.
And
you don't get that.
And I like seeing that you picked up on that, because I didn't, knowing how the actual series goes. And it's not necessarily like too out of character for those moments that happen. It's not like that's out of character or nothing. It's just so different from how they interact in the series. Because hell, even the way Ray gets bodied by Rao, I'm talking Ray jumps up to attack, cloak, poke him in the chest while still being on his fucking horse. That's how Ray gets fucked over in the fucking actual series. So the fact that they kept like even that in regard, same thing with the way Joggy died, down to the setting the roof on fire and shit that happened in the show. So it's like, and then you chose that way to end it. It also doesn't help that after watching the show my first time, at least, I was not a big fan of Rin. The little kid, whiny, just in the back, don't really offer much character. Never been my favorite archetype. Just for people out there, I'm usually more of the Rao type fans when it comes to their characters. Like, Rao is my favorite character in Fist of the North Star, because he's Rao.
Surprising.
Yeah, exactly, because he's Rao. I mean, look at him.
The reason why that guy sits just beyond your ear on your back wall.
Oh yeah.
Well, you just moved, but when I started saying that, he was perfectly perfectly next to your head.
Vegeta.
The old Vegeta.
Yeah.
You like the grumpy guy.
I do like the grumpy guy, the grumpy cocky guy. So yeah, I also like Kenshiro, but anyway, I like Rin more in this movie than I liked her in the series, because she got in the way a lot less in this movie. Mm-hmm. And hell, even when dude was about to crush her with her foot, she actually was like pushing back at least a little.
No, they cut to the guy's face to be like, oh,
wait a minute,
to actually try.
Yeah.
I thought this was just gonna be me like applying my weight.
Yeah, I literally thought this was like a bug, because size-wise, it might as well be.
Yeah, I mean, his boot covered her entire body. in a fetal position, but still.
Yeah. Another standout moment for me was Rao bodying the steel dude. He knocked against the wall, just. Speaking of it not being that gory, dude literally blew up piece by piece.
Like, what is that? Like that's not a martial art.
It's the same martial art. That's the worst part. Oh, talking about the steel thing?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I guess they call it a martial art, but that dude's just like, I turned into metal.
But also the plasma beams coming out of Rao.
That's more their aura or fighting spirit. Like, you know, when they're glowing. That's like something that happens later as it goes on.
What the fuck happened when Rao walked up to the cliff after the dad was like, "You're a bitch, get out of here," and then he walked to the cliff and the sky started showing the past, future, and present all at once, and he was like, "Show me the power." Who the fuck is he talking to?
Fate. I don't fucking know.
Answering him. What happened in that moment?
That's a good question. I think that was done mainly for the movie. I think in the show, he literally, when it's revealed that Rao is the one who killed their master, it literally was like, no, you ain't gonna be the successor. It's gonna be Toki. Well, Toki's got cancer now, so it's gonna be me, right? No, I'm picking Kenshiro. Well, fuck you, you die! And yeah, but no, the series is still worth watching because a lot of stuff happens differently while similarly. Even if I may have spoiled a thing or two here or there, it's worth a watch, especially if you enjoyed the movie. Yeah, so we got some standout moments and stuff. We don't need to, and initial reactions and whatnot. We've been trying to shorten these lately, so I'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. One more standout moment though, and kind of goes with like songs. The Rao versus Ray when they were fighting, the little montage going on with that 80s ass song, Heart of Madness.
My God. Yeah, we had to talk about that. I'm glad you brought us back. Yeah. Wow.
That was 80s ass.
That's one of those, you know, there's always a moment like, okay, the camera is going to be my wife's perspective on the other end of the couch. There's always a moment where we're sitting there watching these movies, and at some point we go, there's a slow mutual turn and eye contact of like, what the fuck is going on over here? And that was a moment when that song busted out. I was like, oh shit.
It was 80s as fuck, and it was anime as fuck because it was half Japanese, half English. Like the verses were in Japanese and the English just like heart of madness. I'm like, yes, this is hilarious. I let out an audible yes. I am kind of sad that my favorite song from the series, which is the theme song, and I'll show it to you when we're off camera, that it didn't make it into this movie. But it's just a good song. But anyway, so yes. So let's say you voice acting, you get to voice act for this movie. Is there a role you'd like to play? Or think you could pull off or enjoy playing?
I don't know. I've never really thought about voice acting. Like, I did professional radio for a few years. I know, folks. Shocking.
Not really.
Managed to watch this.
Not really.
But so I can do some. I mean, I don't know if I can do it anymore. But with some jumping back on the training, I can do some things with my voice. So there's some deep levels that I can go to and be a certain kind of person, or I can go up high. I can't go up higher that much anymore. I could probably live here. That's about where I could be to do a recording and talk.
Okay.
But normally I'm more down here. So there's more. I don't. So I mean, I can I'd give it a shot to any of the adult male cast members.
Fair.
I'd give it a shot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Me, obviously, if it would take some training and stuff as well. But for a Rao would be the optimal. But I don't know if I could pull off a Rao because he's too high up there. But yeah, I'm kind of with you where a lot of the adult male roles are very appetizing in this.
Yeah, and I feel like they're just kind of generic. Mm-hmm. And I can fill in.
Oh, especially if we're going by the 90s. Especially if we're going by 1991 voice acting standards. Yeah. Throw me in there. And I won't say whether, I may not have done the professional radio. I once had a very briefly lived radio show in college called Dork Side of the Moon with a couple buddies of mine on the college radio. They're like, you can
UCF.com/dorkside of the moon.
If it's still there, that'd be hilarious. This is like 06, 05-ish. But far as voice acting, if you want to see some examples of that, I've got Feo Fantasy on this channel where I play through Final Fantasy IX and do all the voices as I do it.
That is true.
For the dialogue. I need to upload the last 2 parts of that, which I ended up streaming so I could finish it in time last year. But I do need to upload the end of that game. But yeah, so you can judge for yourself on how good of a voice actor I am. So final thoughts. I think I get an idea what your final thoughts are, but final thoughts.
I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed myself. There could have been a little bit more variety. There was a little bit of exposition that I either needed or
could have been more clarified.
Yeah. There was a couple of spots where I would have just loved to have known what was going on without having to go to a Wikipedia and double check.
That's fair.
Things like that. So, yeah. So, all in all, though, I really enjoyed myself.
Cool. Yeah, me especially this time around. I watched it, and yeah, I also enjoyed myself. Obviously, I'm a fan of the series, and the more I see it, the stuff I like, endorphins. But it's very much a product of its time, for better or worse. And it's as advertised. It's Bruce Lee in the Mad Max world, poking people and making their heads explode. Sometimes punching or kicking and making their heads explode. Or having other bodily functions happen that they didn't want. But yes, it's a very enjoyable series. And I would say watch the series. The movie is good too as an introduction to some of the main characters. Some other major characters don't show up, as I mentioned. Like there's a female character who looks a lot like Julia named Mamiya, who ends up being a love interest for Rey, who's not mentioned in the movie at all. But just stuff like that, and but no, it's good. Enjoy it. Watch it. Anyway, so what are we watching next time, Bill?
I still haven't decided.
Fair enough, sir.
Hard, guys. I'm looking at so many good movies that I want to watch right now. Can I get your opinion?
Sure.
What are you feeling?
Oh. Shit. Why you do this? You know I have a hard time making decisions.
I'm just saying, do you want me to respond to this movie? Would you rather me just completely flip it and go somewhere else? Would you like some Oscar bait? Would you like something relevant to the times that we're in and when this would be airing? What's your thoughts? I have lots of options.
Let's go response.
Okay, then we are going to watch the 1977 animated film Wizards.
Oh. Zambia. There we go. We're watching Wizards. If you want to watch other stuff, like I mentioned, I have other videos on this channel, including the Fail Fantasy thing. I also have videos with a guy called Super Jazz where we talk about movies, Dragon Ball Z movies related.
Super Jazz!
Exactly, because I talked about if you want to see more anime related stuff and movie reviews in that regard. Also, elsewhere on YouTube, you can find me on the Whatever We Want podcast with the Super Jazz every week, every Wednesday. You can also find me on Twitter and YouTube. Indeed. You can also find me on Twitter and YouTube at Giotavi. Twitter and Twitch at Giotavi. That's Giotavi.
Stop on by.
That's right. Anything else you want to say to the people, Bill? Anything you got to say?
No.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you next week. Adios.